We are set to go. We got pistons. We got king bearings. We got rods. And we got what is this? These are supposed to be my ACL rod bearings. Alright, so as you guys can see, I got my king bearings, but I didn't get my ACL bearings. They put it in an envelope, and it literally busted open and fell out. So we have no ACL bearings. Good old UPS. So I had to contact manufacturer. They haven't gotten back to me yet, but I'm sure they will quickly send me some new bearings. I don't really know why they would package a heavy bearing in an envelope. I mean, King put theirs in a nice box, and even the box had some damage. So that's shipping carriers for you. But today we have pistons and rods and bearings, and we got our crank. Thanks to Jesse, got us a beautiful K24 crank. He took off the flange and he polished and balanced it up for me. So what we're going to do today is it's going to be a quick micrometer job. We're going to get the rod bearing clearances. We'll also go ahead and measure our pistons and write that stuff down too. But today we're just going to have to do our rod bearing clearances. We'll have to wait on mains, of course, to get our block back. Our block is at Jeremy's right now, getting sleeved. So what we'll be able to do is get some measurements today, start writing down measurements, trying some bearings on the rods, and see what we want to go with. So let's get these all unpacked and see what we got. All right, we got some goodies hanging out. So first thing is these are Jeremy Allen 2-4 rods, his Optum brand. First thing you notice the rod or the piston in there. It's pretty unique design there for strength. It's pretty cool. H-beam rod. So these are the 2-4s, 3.8 ARP 2000s. So these are like an 800 horsepower style rod. These are much lighter than what I have in my car, which are the X. Much lighter rod, which means less rotating weight and mass will be easier on the bearings. And the reason we went with these is because he's not looking for 1,000 plus. He's kind of staying the 5, 6, maybe one day 700 range. And these will do just fine. Again, you don't want to build your motor for 1,500 and then only run 500 because you have a lot of heavy parts in the assembly, and you really just want to build around your goals. These lighter parts will last longer with bearing wear because a heavier rotating assembly obviously is a lot more stress on bearings and stuff. So these are going to be a great rod for him. We can do a quick little comparison here. So here's our 2-2 rod. Okay, this is probably, I'm gonna guess, is a Brian Crower rod, possibly. I think it's a Brian Crower BR, probably. So they're H-beam Brian Crower rod. Nothing wrong with these rods. These actually came out of his motor. He's most likely gonna sell these, but these are a 2.0 rod stroke, okay? These are a 2.4. They're different because you have a different crank. And let me show you that real quick. So we go ahead and drop the pin in. Then we go ahead and line up our heads here. Okay. You can see the difference in stroke. So you see how much shorter ours is. See that? It's a lot shorter rod. So more stroke, but you have a shorter rod, because if you put the same rod in, the piston would be like, this high out of the top of the deck. So you need stroker rods to run with the stroker style crank. So you can see there the difference in the 2.0 versus the 2.4. And then we come to our piston. So we went ahead with some Trom. These are a turbo application, more of a street, a lot lighter than what I have in mine, because these have the material, cut out of there. The side skirts aren't full, they're cut out. The insides are cut out a lot more than what mine were. Mine are more the outlaw, you know, like 2,000 horsepower kind of piston. These are still going to be fine up to 1,200, maybe even 1,500. I really wouldn't worry about these. But again, you know, they're cut down. They're a lot lighter, so a lot less rotating mass. But these will swell up. They'll take, you know, they'll swell up a little bit more. They have less material, so they'll heat up and they'll swell up quicker than you know, the larger outlaw pistons will. But these are a great street strip piston, and I trust Trom and I trust Jeremy. These things are great. I love these. I love these pistons. I actually had these in my first 2.0 that I ran, and they ran really good. So I had zero issues with them. So really nice pistons. We went ahead with the premium PVH top ring too. The PVH top ring, a lot tougher than your standard rings that come in pistons today. Went ahead with pin locks, and then of course we got our Pmax coat king bearings, and we will be slopping in some ACLs as well. So I got a set of these. I got a set of ACLs for him coming. Those are the ones that got lost. Well, not lost, but they fell out of the box. So yeah, we're gonna be trying both to see what we like. So I want to show you guys our pin. So we went ahead and got the 220 wall pin. This is not the 250 pin that I run. These are the 220s. So a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter pin than what I got in the outlaw kind of build. But still extremely tough. And then you can see this is a 160 thou pin, much thinner. I mean, of course it's noticeably lighter, right? I'll actually get my scale out here real quick and show you guys how light they are. But again, you want to build to what horsepower you're running. So I mean, this FRM build that he had, you know, it probably was like a 500 style build, 500 or 600 style build, you know, so they went with a lot lighter, lighter pin. But the 220 pin is still fairly light, and you're not going to bend this at this kind of horsepower range. Also, let's do a little piston comparison real quick. So this is CP's. I believe it's just their standard forged. I don't know if it's a 26 or a 43, but I'm not sure. But I know these are 26s. So pretty close in comparison. I mean, when you compare the design and stuff, small differences. As you can see on the side here, this does have a cutout for the oil squirter, even though we're going to be removing the oil squirters. You can also see the height of where the rings and stuff are at, and they're pretty dead even. Look pretty good. And then as you can see here, tops. This is more of a flat top. This has a dish on it. And yeah, you can see the skirt is a little bit longer, which will be good. It's going to keep the piston from rocking more. This is a lot shorter skirt on the CPs. So I really like how the Troms extend the skirt a little bit more. So we went ahead and threw our pins on the scale just to see. So we got a 106 with the smaller pin, and a 141 with the larger pin. So 35-ish grams in difference there. Not too bad, not too bad. Let's do a piston real quick. No rings. 392 on those guys versus a 351. Let's put the pin in there. Nice. 350. So these are a lighter piston than these heavy CPs here. 392. It's a heavy piston. So lighter piston, that's good. Pin comparison, so pretty dead on shot. Looks like, see the top there are completely flush. The second ring you can see is a little different. Trom's a little higher, but the top compression ring's exactly the same. And the oil ring pack is exactly the same. So as you can see, the skirts are longer on the Troms than the CPs. So there's a good comparison of our pistons. I will bring the cranks over then. I'll show you guys what we're talking about when it comes to the stroke of the crank. All right, so here we have a S2000 crank. This is a 2.0 S2000 crank. And this is a K24 2.4 crank. First off, you can tell journal size, which this is the only downside to the Ks, in my opinion. I feel like a wider surface of bearing will maybe last longer than such a small bearing size difference, and it's quite a difference, as you can see. So again, that's why I check my rod bearings so often, is there is less surface area. So that is one advantage to the 2.0s. I have a feeling that this would last longer bearing wise. But again, you're talking about a $400 crank versus now these are going for $1,200, and you're getting more power and torque out of these versus these. So you just got to compare the differences. In my opinion though, especially for his horsepower level, he's not going to have to worry about bearings. In my horsepower level, I will, and I do check my rod bearings quite often. Even if I was running 1200 in a 2-liter, I would still be checking these rod bearings pretty often because there's just a lot of stress on them. So, you know, I'm not an expert, but I would think that more surface area on a bearing, you know, it'll take more abuse. There's more surface to abuse, so it's not so harsh on such a smaller surface. The other thing, of course, is so this kind of mark to this mark, okay, that's kind of like your stroke versus this guy from here down to here. So that's where your stroke comes into play. So this is your center line of your main, and this is how far it throws your rods. So you can see even just by sight, you know, so this is 84 millimeter, and this is I think 100 or 101. So a lot more throw on this crank, and that's why you need your shorter rods, because a longer rod, you know, if you were to put, you know, this guy, let me view out here. If you were to put this guy in this crank, this piston is going to go a lot further up than this guy. It won't go quite as far. So that is why you need to go with a smaller rod to adjust for the stroke. Now you're still getting more piston throw, which is giving you that 0.4 liters extra cubic inches, because this guy is throwing your piston up and down the bore a lot more than this guy is. But you do have to account for the deck height of your block and go with a shorter connecting rod. So that's your differences. The only other thing you got to do is you got to nip off the end here, like the factory guys. The Ks have a a lip here that I get machined off. Another thing you have to do is your engagement for your key on the Ks is not as wide. And I actually forgot to tell Jesse to do this. He did it on mine, so I'll have to do this one, which is no big deal. I got tools I can do it. But what I like to do is extend the key. Here's your key, and I like to extend this further back, because right now you're only going to get that much engagement with it, and with the factory you get that much engagement. So what I do is I take this and I drill it out so I get more engagement. So we'll have to do that, but other than that, we're set to go. All right, so we got our extended drilled job and we are clearing. I didn't even have to cut the key. Gotta remember to put your trigger on, but we got everything down there in flush. Let me show you guys what I did. So what you do is you gotta extend the key out. So as you can see here, I just use a Dremel and drill a slot longer, okay? And be real careful not to nick the top of the bearing, which I did not. So we're good there, but as you can see now, that's your extension slot. I just take a Dremel and I just drill on each side. So that way your key, you don't have to cut your key down, and your key will fit down in there. You just gotta make sure you don't round these edges off. You gotta keep these edges nice and sharp so that way your key stays in there. Next comes the fun part. We're gonna start miking this crank out. What I do is I'll do all the rods, and I will put down on my paper what they are, and we'll go from there. It looks like my last rod was a 1.8898 across the board. So let's see how close this K24 crank is to my last crank. All right, so we are getting 8896 across the board, and I had 8898. So we are 0.2 of a thousandths smaller than my previous crank. So they're coming in good. Which is important is that they're all the same, and they are. So we're looking really good on the rods. So now we're gonna pull out our rod bearings, and we're gonna start piecing some rod bearings on some rods. All right, so we are trying 2 different sets of bearings. We have our ACL bearings they do have a coating on them as well. And these are the King Pmax coat, and they have quite a coating on them. So King has 2. So they have their regular King racing bearing, which apparently there's no coating. There is a coating. There's definitely a coating, but apparently it's different than the Pmax coat. All right, so these XP are no coat. XPC has the coat, but I mean, obviously there's still a coating on them. You can see the black coating. So this is the standard King bearing, and then this is the Pmax coat bearing. They're a little bit more money, but apparently they're quite a nice bearing. I've always ran the standard coated bearings, but these new Pmax coat bearings apparently have a lot nicer wear to them. So we went ahead and got those to try those and see what they come in as. We just mic'd the ACLs, and they came in at 2 1/10, which is right around, I was going for 2 thousandths on the rods. And so we're gonna go ahead and see what the Pmax coat standards are gonna mic out. All right, so we did the King coat and the ACL, both standards. I got a 1.9 with the King coat and a 2.1 with the standard. So write down that these are standards. So actually super surprising. I thought there'd be more of a split there. On my motor, we had quite a difference with the different brands of bearing. But again, I didn't have these coats. I had the standards. So maybe they made their coats a little bit nicer, but the targets are right on. So honestly, I might even lean a little bit more towards the coats, just because I mean this is a good number for street, and I kind of want to throw the coats in this car, just because these are supposed to be a very nice bearing. You pay for them, but they're supposed to be extremely nice. So we might run the King coats. So the next determination, if I want to run these, is going to be how consistent the bearings are. So we're only using 1 rod to compare the brands. So I'll keep using quote unquote number 4 rod right now. So I didn't do any of the other rods, because you don't want to put different, in case there's a deviation in the rod journal, which most of the time there's not, but you just want to take that out of the equation. So we put the Kings in it, we put the ACL in it, we got our measurements. So now the biggest thing is going to be, okay, do I want to throw the coats in this? And if it's yes, we're going to split the rest of the 3. We're going to throw coats in all 4 and get our measurements and see if they're even across the board, or as even as possible. Remember, on the last build, which was my motor, the Kings were very up and down all over the place. Again, these were not the coats. These were the standard Pmax. But so we're going to see how the Kings lay out. So if these King coats, if I'm getting, 2 to 1.9 across the board, we're going to say, let's run the coats. If they're very up and down, we're going to take them all out. We're going to put ACLs in and see how the ACLs look. But we are going to go with a standard bearing on this. This car is not going to need an X bearing for these. All right, so we're looking pretty good with the King coats. We're at a 1.8, a 2.2, a 2.2, and a 1.9. So pretty dang close. And I think we're going to stay there with the coat. Again, like I said, I really want to I really want to do these coat bearings. They're supposed to be really nice. So I think we're going to go ahead and run that. My goal was right around 2 even. So, and we're pretty much on the money. Again, there's a little deviation here and there. But we will remeasure the day of assembly real quick. I always just do a quick pre-measure again just to make sure everything's good, because metals can change. So we're talking 1/10 of a thou. It's very, very, very fine. And just from earlier and coming back out here and remeasuring the crank, I actually got a little bit wider reading on the #1 main. My heater is on, so my temperature is fluctuating between 62 and 65. So temperature changes metal. It changes how it expands and contracts. So you have to make sure when you're measuring that you're measuring all at the same time at the same temperature, and all the metal has to be kind of even. You can't have like your rod sitting inside your house at 75 degrees and you're cranking your garage at 40 degrees and try to get bearing clearances. It's going to be way off. So you got to make sure that your temperatures are the same. So I'm happy with that. I think we're going to stay there with the rods. Next we'll have to do the mains, but we'll have to wait till we get the sleeve block back. But what we are going to do, we're going to go ahead and measure the mains and see where they come out at. All right, so we're looking pretty good on the mains. So we got a #1 is a 6.2, number 2 is a 6.0, and then number 4 is a 6.0, number 5 is a 6.2, and then 3, which is our middle guy, which always is a little bit smaller diameter. That's the one that doesn't have any oil holes on it. That is a 55. So that's typical for the middle one to be low like that. So looks pretty good. Now we just kind of wait until we get our block back to throw mains in to see what we want to go with our mains. Most likely mains, I'm probably gonna shoot, I'll probably shoot for like a 2.0, probably, actually, I don't know, I might go to like an 18 or something on the mains, a little bit snugger on the main, but we'll see. We'll see what they come out as. I want to throw in the standard Kings coats and see what they are, and then I might throw in the ACL standards and see what they are. Kind of get a feel for that. But we'll probably end up shooting for probably like an 18 is my guess. But yeah, we'll see what the bearings come out like. I don't think we did. No, we didn't check to see what the old mains were at, but these were King standards, I believe. Yep, they were King standards. So they had King standards in before. Most likely the standards are going to give us a good bearing clearance. So that's pretty much it for today. Showed you guys what we're dealing with when it comes to new parts. There's really not a lot more we can do before we get our block. The crank's ready to go. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean, I don't know why that happens. I'm going to clean the journals out with brake cleaner, get the crank really good and clean. And then everything else is clean, ready to go. So we're just waiting on our block to get back. Probably be a few weeks before I'm back on here. Jeremy's got to sleeve the block, so that's going to take a little bit. But as soon as we get the block back, we'll get this block back together, back in the car, and then hopefully weather cooperates and we can actually get out and get this thing tuned. But until then, guys, I appreciate it. Comment, like, and subscribe. I will catch you guys on the next video. See you.